You're listening to Trek FM.
Welcome to From There to Here, Trek FM's 50th Anniversary Rewatch project, where the hosts of the network get together and discuss for you all 729 episodes of the Star Trek franchise. And joining me today is my special guest, Tristan Riddell. How you doing, Tristan?
I'm doing great. It's great to be here, and I cannot wait to talk some Deep Space Nine.
These are a couple of really good episodes. We are going to be talking A Simple Investigation and Business as Usual. And in A Simple Investigation, there's a murder on the station, and Odo begins to investigate and ends up falling in love with a woman who's not Major Kira. Dun, dun, dun.
I think that has some major points for the episode right there, is that it's a non-Kira romance with Odo. And it's one that he's into. You know, like it's not like Lwaxana chasing after him where he doesn't want anything to do with her, or he's not reciprocal. This is, you know, like he's on board. He's ready for it. Like he wants to try this. And I think that is a good aspect of this episode.
Renee Auberjonois looks funny without a shirt on.
Yeah, I'm looking at the photo right now. And it just, I'm sure Renee Auberjonois himself looks fine without a shirt on, but Odo looks odd without his uniform on. That's so, it just, yeah. It also makes me think about that time that he had sex with the female changeling.
Mm-hmm.
You're just like, oh. You're like, I'm sorry, having flashbacks now where we're seeing them in the afterglow after in their clothes, and they're just sitting on the bed, and she's like, so that's sex, and he's like, yep. Thankfully this time was a little bit less awkward than that.
Yes. Yeah, I like this episode. It's fun. It's a neat concept, a neat idea. It's weird at the end that we get that this woman is actually like this deep undercover operative who doesn't really know who she is, but because the whole time you're watching the episode, like, you know that there's something up with her, but you're just assuming that she's a criminal the whole time, right? And you just assume that she's lying to Odo the whole time and she's playing him, right? But, you know, she is lying to him, but not really willingly, you know?
Yeah, that's one thing that I really like about Deep Space Nine, is that very often they will take these very, I don't want to say run of the mill storylines. Like they will take something that is it's nothing new. Like this kind of plot is nothing new, where the detective falls in love with the would-be criminal, but then they find out that they were a deep undercover agent. You know, like, we've seen that story hundreds of times, but because this is Star Trek, they take a really nice twist to it, and that's really gratifying. And also, like, I love the little implant that she had in her skull. Like, it's very cyberpunk, you know. It's just really, really cool and fun. And this is the type of story that you can get anywhere, but with this kind of twist, you can only get on Star Trek.
Yeah, I like that too. The data port on her neck is really cool. The twist, I can kind of take it or leave it. This is it's not one of my favorite episodes of Deep Space Nine. I like the two killers who like killed that guy. I think they're a neat play off of each other, and how that one guy's like, oh, so we don't have to kill her then? And he's like, he doesn't really want to, but he's like, I'll do my job anyways. And I don't know. I think that those guys have a lot of fun to play, you know, in the episode.
Yeah, I also I really like that actress. I think what's her name? Dae Young, I think. She's been in Star Trek actually a couple of times, where she was in Masterpiece Society. She was in an Enterprise as well with 2 Days and 2 Nights. So she's been on 3 different series. So we're talking TNG, Deep Space Nine, and Enterprise. And I really like that actress. I think she does a really good job. I think I really like her look and her voice. It's very distinct, and you recognize her even if she's under makeup. And I think, I don't know, like, where, even if sometimes this episode can get a little weird or a little slow, I like I like that it shows Odo growing. It's season 5.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we definitely should have seen some growth from Odo by now. And this is that time, because it's kind of like 7 of 9 syndrome, where like, yes, he's like, he and she are different. They're separated from their kind. They feel like an outsider on the crew, and they're the gruff ones. They're the short ones, sometimes rude ones, but there needs to be episodes where we explore that emotional side of them.
Yeah, you got it. It's an expansion of their character. It's a growth of their character, and it's something that we have to go through every once in a while with them. So, and I don't know, it's just the love stories for me are kind of like take it or leave it. So I don't know.
Well, Star Trek doesn't always do.
Give me a Mirror Universe episode.
yeah. Like Star Trek doesn't always do romance very well. I mean, not usually. It's usually the not even second on the list, but third on the list of things important in an episode.
Yeah. Well, should we move on to business as usual?
I guess we're running through it fast, but let's just go ahead and move on.
The Quark is broke. He's got no money, and his cousin Gala, who we've heard so much about him and his moon, comes to him with an awesome plan to get Quark out of debt fast and make everybody tons of profit. What do you think of this episode?
I like any episode that gets Cisco yelling. I think I am such a huge fan of Cisco screaming at people and dressing people down.
You seen that video?
Oh yeah, no, I have that video favorited. Like, I know exactly what YouTube video you were talking about, and I think it's just called Cisco yelling at people. And I love that moment when he spins Quark's chair around, and I can't remember exactly what he says, where he's like, if you so much as, you know, like litter on the promenade, and then he just gets that really husky voice. He's just like, I will nail you to the wall. And it's just like, I'm terrified just watching him. And I like Quark a lot. I got to meet and actually spend a little bit of time with Armin Shimmerman, and he is just this really, he's just a commanding presence. He's just like, when you're around him, you just feel like you immediately need to get to work. Like you need to go do something, because you know he is such a hard worker and he's so good at what he does. And in this episode, he really shines. And I think you see him, like, because he's able to go against his character, but not betray his character. And I think that's a very fine line to walk. Yeah,
you got it. I like Quark a lot. The more I watch Deep Space Nine, like I've watched the whole thing through 5 or 6 times now, and I enjoy the Ferengi episodes more and more as I go along, but I love this episode. I think this episode is absolutely fantastic because it's a serious Ferengi episode, and none of the Ferengi episodes in Deep Space Nine are serious. They're all generally comedic, and I like seeing it. It's this get-rich-quick scenario that's been dropped into Quark's lap, and how can he possibly say no to this? And the way that the episode was written, where they're like, they got him and they're gonna throw him in jail. Odo's gonna throw him in jail, and Kira walks in and says, "You know what? You got to let him go. The Bajoran government's not going to press charges because this guy Hageth helped give us weapons during the Resistance, and so we wouldn't have fought off the Cardassians." You know, like just those little things that are there, and the fact that they're using holograms for it, and how these people are so into the weapons. You know, like testing them on the hologram, and then they're just nonchalantly like, I'll order 6,000, or like whatever number they whip out. But it plays with this moral question where it's like, this is such an easy money for Quark, but he's been rubbed off on by humanity and our values so much where he doesn't feel okay with this anymore. You know? So it's a really interesting approach for the Quark character in that money isn't everything for this guy anymore. I mean, I like the fact that we get the callback to the previous season's episode where he's been banned from doing business with other Ferengi, you know, so because he broke that deal with FCA liquidator Brunt. And so it's a nice callback to that. And I think the reason why this doesn't make more people's lists higher up and as favorite Ferengis and stuff is the B plot with Kiriyoshi not being able to sleep. And while that's a good B plot, it's just so odd to be thrown in with this one. You know, like they're just so opposite. It's a great B plot. It's a fun B plot, but just mixed with this dark material is just so weird. And it reminds me a lot of another one of my favorite episodes of Enterprise, how they've done that, and that's the Silent Enemy episode, where the A plot is this dark alien who won't talk to us and is firing on us and invading our ship. And Hoshi's trying to find out what Reed's favorite food is, and we find out it's pineapples. You know, like, they're both good plot lines. They just don't fit together. So, anyways.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I think that is, it is unbalanced. I think you're right. Maybe that's why people don't always go to this as their favorite episode or their go-to episode. And it's true because there's oftentimes you see that in Star Trek where the A plot is far superior to the B plot, but there have been times when, you know, like you get a good episode and the A plot is just as solid as the B plot, or you don't even have a B plot. And with this one, I feel there's certain Star Trek episodes out there where it kind of feels like Family Guy, where they'll just jumble, like they'll pull scenes from a hat. And you know that they wrote this episode with Quark and the guns and everything like that. And they're like, oh, crap, what are we going to do with everybody else? And then one writer at the end of the table is like, oh, hey, you remember how I pitched that idea, you know, like 3 weeks ago about Kiriyashi who can't sleep? And they're like, oh, yeah, throw that in there. And so sometimes that feels that way, where it doesn't feel organically written. It just feels tacked on.
Yeah. You're right. But I didn't write it down, but the guy that plays Gala in this episode is just outstanding. Like this is such a well-done episode, well acted. The guest stars that are in it, you know, Steven Berkoff playing Haggith, he's outstanding. You know, he was in Rambo 2, Beverly Hills Cop, Clockwork Orange, and
Children of Dune is where I know him from.
Children of
like,
Dune? The miniseries?
Yeah, the miniseries. I'm a huge Dune fan, and so when I saw him in this episode when he popped up, I was like, oh my god, it's Stilgar. You know, like I was freaking out.
And then we got Lawrence Tierney, who's the Regent Palomar. He's in Hill Street Blues. He was in The Big Goodbye as one of the holograms back in season 1 of The Next Generation. But he's in Reservoir Dogs as well. Like, so they've got some really awesome guest stars in this episode as well, and that adds to the power of the episode. Like Steven Berkoff playing Haggith, like that guy is just crazy, and he does a really good job of it. So I don't know. I cannot express my love enough for this episode. I really, really love this episode a lot.
Yeah, this is a good episode, and this is the episode where we find out for Quark, 28 million deaths is just one too many.
It just pushes him over the line. Right on. Well, where can people find you on the network, Tristan?
Well, you can find me at To The Journey, the Voyager show on Trek.fm. And you can also find me on Twitter at The Insane Robin. You can also find me on another network called The Nerd Party at thenerdparty.com, where we have a few geek shows and nerd shows. And one in particular that I'm proud of is Nerd Nuptial, a show that I host with my wife, where we talk about all things nerdy and our marriage. Where can we find you?
You can find me here on the network with new episodes of Melodic Treks, which is all about the music of Star Trek. And you can find me on Twitter at Brandon-Mutala, and you can find me on the Babel Conference every once in a while poking my head up. So join us again tomorrow for our last day in this block as we talk about before and after and ties of blood and water.